Starting a homestead on a budget might seem overwhelming, but what if I told you it could actually be an advantage? Today we're diving into big picture strategies, not just little money saving hacks, but real mindset shifts and practical habits that will help you build a thriving homestead without breaking the bank. Whether you're working with raw land, a city lot, or something in between, these tips will help you save money, make smart decisions, and create a more self sufficient life. Hello and welcome to the Modern Homesteading Podcast. I'm your host, Harold Thornborough, and I'm glad you're joining me today, but it is just me today. Rachel's still down for the count. She's her and her family got hit pretty hard by a little bug, and they're fighting that off, and that's all right. We all need a little break sometimes, and yeah, I think we have a great show for you today. We're going to talk about tips for starting and operating a homestead on a small budget. I think it'll be a pretty good topic. I want to cover these bigger picture um, tips. It'd be real easy to get into the weeds and talk about every little thing you can do to save money on this and not spend money on that. But that ain't really what I want to talk about. I want to talk about these bigger picture ideas that it's more of a lot of them are somewhat mindset and just bigger picture habits and things like that that will help you save money starting and operating a homestead. Before we jump into that, though, how about some updates on the homestead? It was warm for a while, and then it got cold again, and then it's been raining, and we just had this mixture of weather. But it's that time of the year when you get a lot of that. But I have been uh, taking a lot of elderberry cuttings, and I've planted a few, and I've sold a few, and I'll probably only be selling those for another a few days, and then I'm probably going to call it quits for the season on those. But comfrey is right around the corner. We'll be digging up the comfrey here in a few weeks and selling some comfrey cuttings. So I'll be doing that here real soon. Yeah, other than that, it's just been prepping a few beds, cleaning up, doing a lot of pruning. And I got a lot of piles of limbs laying around that I haven't quite mulched up yet and got rid of. And yeah, I did a lot of I did some coppicing of some mulberry trees. I did a lot of pruning. Like I said, there's just limbs everywhere. Cleaning up the pond, getting ready to hatch some quail eggs. Got a lot of stuff going on. I'm actually in a dilemma right now with the quail eggs because next month I have to go to New York for a few days for a conference, and I haven't put any in the incubator yet because I'm trying to figure it up, and I'm like, okay, they will hatch just a few days before I go, and I really didn't want to put the burden on my wife to try to be in the brooder, the chicks in the brooder, and have to feed and water them. So I'm trying to like space it out. So I might wait a couple more weeks before. I don't mind if they're in the incubator and they're going to be not hatching till after I get back. But so I might have to space them out a few days there and see if I can't just get it just right on getting in there and getting them right when I get back. So anyway, that brings that brings up the topic of the conference. I will be up there in upstate New York. The link, I'm drawing a blank on the name of the festival. It's a homesteading festival up there in the town, but I will have a link in the show notes. So if you want to check that out, if you're up in that area, if you're in a kind of upstate, Eastern New York there, um, yeah, I'd love to have you pop in and say hi if you're planning on going to that little homestead festival up there. It'll be fun. I'm talking 3 times. I thought I was only speaking twice. They added another one to me, which I was happy to do. I'd actually mentioned that I would talk on, those 3 topics early on, but I'll be talking about small scale permaculture. I'll be talking about Coturnix quail, which is fun. And then I'm also going to be talking about getting started with aquaponics. So that'll be a fun one too, because I've done a lot of aquaponics. I've done different kinds of systems. I've actually done 3 different kinds of systems here on my property, and I've had a lot of fun with it. And it's something that permaculture definitely holds a bigger place in my heart than aquaponics. I don't know that them when you I don't know that aquaponics and permaculture necessarily go together really well, but I like it. I think it's a very good thing, self-sufficient way of doing things, and you grow some vegetables really good. I do like using it in a permaculture system, and the fact that it helps me to root cuttings. I really love that, and it actually feeds. It actually provides a lot more growing material for my permaculture homestead. So in that way, it does fit really well. But as far as providing food, I don't know that it's necessarily something that goes super super well in a pure permaculture system. But I'm far from pure on anything. So um, I definitely enjoy doing it. It's a lot of fun. But when I think about permaculture, I think about these like set it and forget it or grow it and it kind of takes care of itself and it does it like the nature thing, right? Aquaponics is not like that. It's watch it like a hawk and, testing water and making sure pumps are operating and you take your eyes off of it for a few days and you have a failure and it just falls apart on you. So it's not like that. You definitely have to keep in it and dealing with it and watching it all the time. But I like it. It's a lot of fun and it's very productive, which I really liked. Anyway, I got off on that little rabbit trail. With all that though, I mean, it's been going well around here. I think that I'm excited. I'm excited about getting this garden going. I've started a few things and I've got some stuff ready to go to the garden here in a few weeks. And yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a great year. Um, I always think every year is going to be a great year, and there's always troubles every year of some kind, whether it be pests or drought or something. And that's kind of the fun of it, though. You deal with it, you move on, and you learn from your mistakes, and you do better the next year. And it's just this constant growth and skill building, and I really enjoy it. So I'm looking forward to it, and I know many of you are as well. And I look forward to seeing pictures of people's gardens and hearing their little stories, and it'll be a lot of fun. I can't wait to get started with a whole nother season of gardening here in Indiana. So, a lot of you folks are already well into it if you're down south, but here in Indiana, we're just getting started. So, well, let's jump into our topic, tips for starting and operating a homestead on a small budget. When you're embarking on the journey of starting a homestead from scratch, it can really feel overwhelming, no doubt about it, especially when, considering the possible costs involved. However, it is possible to live a homesteading lifestyle on a small budget. I feel like I'm proof of that to some degree. I when I got started, I was actually out of work because I had cancer, and you can go back and hear the whole story on that. But I'd been off work for several weeks. We were eating up our savings, really fast paying bills and whatnot while I was off work, and I wanted to get started homesteading. So I was building raised beds out of scrap material. I'm, getting soil from like a friend of mine. He has an excavating business to fill them. I'm doing like all the budget saving things, right? And it didn't cost me anything really. I mean, I got started for next to nothing. Now, as I've grown, you buy more stuff, but there's a lot of things you can do. So today I want to talk about some tips, that can kind of guide you through and then, get some top lessons I've learned from starting and operating a homestead on a small budget. Because even today, I try to operate on a pretty small budget. I am not trying to have $20 tomatoes. I want them to be. I want the food that I'm growing to be cheaper than I'm buying it in the grocery store, and I feel like that I'm definitely make that happen. Um, but these are the things that's helped me make good decisions, and I think they pay off in the long run. So yeah, we'll just jump into it first with the benefits of starting with less. I think there's an advantage to starting with less. It might seem kind of counterintuitive, right? But starting a homestead with a limited budget can actually be an advantage because when money is tight, you're forced to learn valuable skills to make wise decisions and to become more resourceful. And I think that that's a big part of homesteading, isn't it? That we do those things. The process of learning and doing things yourself, it not only saves you money, but it also just kind of deepens your connection to the land and your homestead. When you build your own structures, when you're installing your own water systems, water collection systems and things, and you're solving problems, as they arise, it can be kind of life changing at times if it's a big thing. But these experiences are also life changing, right? And it helps you build resilience and independence. So, tip number one: make short term sacrifices for long term gains. I think that living modestly in the short term can really help you achieve your long-term homesteading goals. For example, if you're starting, say you're buying land, you can actually start with raw land, and it may require like living off grid in a camper or something. I know folks that are doing that. While you build your dream homestead, you could do that. But the freedom to design everything exactly the way you want it and remain debt free, I think it's well worth the temporary discomfort. It was just a few weeks ago. Somebody sent me, Travis, I believe it was the name, sent me an email, and that he'd been listening to the podcast, and they're living in a camper in a campground, in a seasonal campground, kind of year round in this campground. And I'm going to tell you this just because I don't want anybody to feel like they're limited by what they have. But he's built these beds that he put all the way around. I should have asked him if I could share the picture because it would be a great picture to share on the video podcast here. But yeah, he built these raised beds on stands, on legs, all the way around their camper, and was growing just an amazing amount of food. And he said he were expanding. They're looking for land. They're going to homestead, but they aren't letting their current situation prevent them from growing some of their own food. And I was really impressed. So Travis, thank you for sending me that. It was really cool to see those pictures and to hear your story and what you're doing. But yeah, it was really amazing. And again, living in a camper, they're keeping the budget small. They're doing what they can where they're at. And I could see them doing that, buying some real land, living in a camper or something for a while. And I mean, I don't know if that's their plans or not, but I'm saying it's very doable to live like that. And of course, it's definitely more doable in some parts of the world than it is in other parts of the world. I mean, in really cold areas and stuff, it can be a little bit more challenging, but there's ways. I guess I just want to say that you make these short-term sacrifices for long-term gains. You may not have everything you want in the beginning. And I think that's a lesson that most people need to learn and we need to practice because instant gratification is really an enemy of just about everything. If you want things now, and you want everything within a couple of years, it's gonna cause you financial struggles, and it can cause you a lot of growing pains as far as just learning things too. Because if you take on too much and you don't get the experience of struggling a little bit and making things happen and figuring things out and kind of using that your mind to problem solve and do those kind of things. It really it's a disservice to you. So yeah, again, short-term sacrifices for long-term gains. Now, number two, I think is one of the most important things. It's keeping your monthly budget low. Yeah, cutting unnecessary expenses is crucial when starting a homestead. Living off grid can reduce, if that's your thing. For most people, it ain't. It can reduce utility bills and you can avoid debt. Or you can just live in a town with a small city lot, instead of going out and buying 20 acres and homestead right where you're at. Focus on spending money only on the essentials and look for ways to save on groceries and daily expenses. Do a monthly budget and hold to it, and I think that debt prevents more people from reaching their dreams than anything. Because again, and a lot of that comes from attempts at instant gratification, putting too much on credit cards and getting loans for things that we really, are stretching to get. Then you find you're working more than you want to just to pay those bills and stay caught up. And it's just this vicious circle. But definitely, you know, maintaining a monthly budget and holding to it. There's a lot of resources out there too. I mean, there's some great books out there. I know that Larry Burkett has a great book on debt free living, and there's some other really good resources out there for living debt free. And I think it's important. I wish I would have grasped that concept as a young man because it definitely tied me up working many, many, many hours most of my life, trying to get out of debt and pay a lot of things off. And I wish it was a concept I would have grasped really early on in my life. It would have helped me reach a lot of my goals and dreams a lot faster. Number three, observe and learn from your land. Take the time to observe your land throughout the seasons, all the seasons. Before you make any major decisions, definitely you can put in some gardens. You can do, a few things. When it comes to like where you're going to place trees or where you're going to put in infrastructure, though, you really want to observe the land really well before you start making those big, expensive decisions or major decisions that are hard to undo. Understand how the sun, the wind, the water, and the wildlife kind of interact with your property. These are all permaculture concepts, but it's really important to really pay attention to those things. And when you pay attention to these things, it's really going to help you make informed choices about where to plant, where to build, where to invest your time and your resources. You know, fence is expensive. Building projects are expensive. Knowing and not having to tear these things down and move them later is huge. Planting trees can be, a big task, and it can save you a lot of time, and you can spend a lot of money even putting in trees in places where you probably shouldn't have put them. Even raised beds. I've moved my garden 3 times since I started homesteading because when I first started out, I didn't make all the best choices, and I learned of better ways to do it as time went on. We grow, we learn from our mistakes, and that's going to happen no matter what. But it is good to take some time and observe and learn from your land, no matter what kind of land you're talking about. many acres or a city lot even. It's good to really understand your land before you make certain choices. I have a friend who um, he moved into a homestead and he just wasn't aware of what the property did. He bought is a 5 acre piece of land. He started running chicken and rabbit tractors to his property, and he moved there in the late fall, early winter. And sure enough, the spring rains came. He's running tractors across his land, and right across the whole right middle of his property turns into a river from the fields and through the ditch lines and stuff, and it was just didn't know it, and it wasn't really obvious, super obvious. You could tell there was some signs of it, but maybe it was a once every several years thing or something. But no, he lived there for a while, and it happened pretty much every spring. I think that it just ran this river pretty much right through his property, and yeah, it cost him some livestock, and it made it really difficult to do certain things there on that property. So yeah, learn from your land and make good decisions. Number 4, create a master plan. Before diving into multiple projects, take time to develop a master plan for your homestead. This plan should outline your long-term goals and the steps needed to achieve them, really. Consider the layout of your property, the placement of gardens, shelters, or where you're going to put things, water sources, future structures. Having a clear plan really is going to help you prioritize your tasks and avoid costly mistakes. This kind of goes with the last one. Start with observing and create the master plan, and also ultimately just understanding your goals. What do you want to accomplish? Just on the last podcast episode, I had Dakota Cohen on, and he talked a lot about this. Understanding the goals. What are your uh, goals? What are you trying to do? What do you want to accomplish with your property? And this is going to help you develop a master plan and make the right decisions. Ultimately, he even broke it down into, are you on the right property? But if you decide this is my property and this is where I'm going to do it, understand what your goals are and work towards that. If it's to, you know, uh, build a life of some real self-sufficiency for preparedness purposes, and take that aim. If it's for health, and if it's just because you want a property that's going to pretty much grow without a lot of nurturing, permaculture may be something you're going to look into really heavily. um, are you going to run a business? Are you going to run like market gardens and things like that? I mean, all these things are going to change the way you look at your property. So understand your master plan, what you're wanting to accomplish, and start building towards that. Number 4, and this is a biggie, I think, do most things yourself. One of the best ways to save money is to learn how to do things yourself. When it's building structures, fixing leaks, planting a garden, every skill you acquire reduces your resilience on outside help and keeps your costs down. I mean, ultimately, I'm not opposed to paying somebody to do a job. There's just people who are specialists in their field. And if you've got the resources, that's great. Pay them, get it done quick. They will do it better than you will ever do it when you're learning how to do it, no doubt about it. But it's good to learn how to do these things, and it's going to save you a lot of money. A lot of money. If you're trying to do this on a budget, doing things yourself can make a big difference. And homesteading requires a broad range of skills, from gardening to animal care to carpentry to plumbing. I think these are all essential skills. And just kind of being a generalist allows you to tackle a variety of tasks, without needing to be a specialist, really. And you're going to save money, and you're going to make your homestead more self sufficient for sure. I grew up in a house where we didn't pay nobody for nothing. If the roof needed replaced, we did it. If the plumbing broke, we fixed it. If a furnace went down, we took care of it. If the electrical work, my dad wasn't an electrician, but we figured it out. We rewired things. I mean, we didn't pay nobody for anything. We just fixed it, and that's the way I grew up. And I've tried to do that a lot in my life. I try to think of some things I've paid for, and it's not been much. I mean, I generally do things myself. I've gotten some help a couple times. I think I had our furnace repaired one time when it was kind of beyond these newer furnaces, it's a lot of, computerized stuff in there, a lot of circuit boards and stuff I didn't know. And it was a circuit board that needed replaced. I'd paid a guy to fix that. I'm just saying, sometimes it's just quicker. And if you have the resources, pay to get it done. But learning how to do it yourself is really good. And with a resource like YouTube, you can really learn how to do most things yourself, even really kind of specialist things, things like fixing a piece of machinery or an electrical device or something. There's generally a YouTube video that'll show you how to do it. we live in a special time, folks, when it just that wasn't the case, 30 years ago when I was raising little kids and, living here, just moving into this house. And we had to figure out a lot of things without a resource like YouTube. It definitely makes it easier. I use it sometimes, believe me. Number 5, buy secondhand and look for discounts. Whenever possible, purchase used items or materials at a discount. Thrift stores, yard sales, online marketplaces, these can all be just treasure troves for affordable supplies. Don't hesitate to ask for discounts on materials that are slightly damaged. I've bought a lot of things like that. If they're imperfect and they've got some damage to them, but they'll still work, most times you can get a pretty hefty discount from a store. I bought a bunch of bags that were 99% full of compost. They had little tears in them and a little bit spilled out, and I got them for like 25% of the cost. Whole bunch of bags, like 50 bags like that. The whole side of the pallet got raked and it just opened up the whole side of the bag. They sold me tons of bags, just that were really fine. There wasn't maybe 1 or 2 bags total out of I don't know how many bags, a whole pallet of bags that, it looked like maybe a bag or so worth of compost on the ground, and I got a huge discount. I mean, I literally like 25% of the cost, to buy those. Look for deals like that. I bought, used lumber one time to build fence. Guy he had took down, I don't even know where he got it from, but it had nail holes in it, but it was 2x4s, 2x6s, 4x4s, all this lumber, and I bought 2 whole truckloads of this stuff. I mean, I had my trucks all weighted down. He had it all in a storage building where he brought it up. I think he said he brought it up from Kentucky, took something apart down in Kentucky, brought it all up here, had it all stacked nice. It was all straight. It was just like it had been used. They pulled all the nails out of it and it was clean. And I built many, many projects around my homestead with that lumber, and I got it at a big time discount, way cheaper than I would have got it if I'd have bought it new, no doubt about it. And a few nail holes did not bother me at all. So look for those kind of deals. Number 6, I really think you should embrace permaculture principles when you're trying to save money. Permaculture, it's a design philosophy and it emphasizes working with nature rather than against it. And by observing natural ecosystems and mimicking their patterns, you can really create a homestead that's sustainable, resilient, and requires less effort and expense to maintain. Start by incorporating elements just like companion planting, water conservation techniques like building swales and things like that. Use natural pest control methods. These things actually save you money. In the long run, these save you money. Um, I think of permaculture, I think expanding. I bought a few things and then I take cuttings and I dig up roots and I do things and I expand my garden with the plants I already have. I go and get things from other homesteaders like that. Hey, can I take a root cutting or can I take a cutting off your tree there? Yeah, most homesteaders be like, great, take it, and you're planting that and you're learning too. You're learning how to propagate things and plant things and expand things. You can buy one raspberry bush, one blackberry bush, one elderberry bush, and then next thing you know, you've got hundreds of them if you know what you're doing, if you know learn how to propagate and expand and just continue to multiply those things. So embrace those permaculture principles. They can be really cost saving in the beginning, but I think even more so in maintaining and just operating your homestead. I think I have saved thousands of dollars through propagation and just building guilds and things like that, and putting in trees and things. So and I think it's all comes down to permaculture principles. I really do. And water conservation, like I said, I've put some swales in. I do water collection, and the way I just kind of disperse it on the property saves you a lot of money. When you're not there watering your garden, it can save you a lot of money. So yeah, I think permaculture principles are really good for that. Number 8, be mindful of land size and location. When you're purchasing land, consider how much you really need and what you can afford. I think a lot of homesteaders make this mistake. They take on way more than they even need. They don't realize how much you can do on a smaller property. And I think a smaller, well utilized piece of land that's set up correctly can be more manageable and less costly than a large property and be just as productive if it's done right. Um, Consider the future value of land. You may want to upgrade and you might want to consider selling or whatever, and avoid areas that are prone to natural disasters or high taxes. If you get in the on the outskirts, really close, 30, 40, 50 miles of a big city, a lot of times they're just because of the expansion and because of, people moving into those areas to try to be closer to work in those big cities, but not wanting to live in the cities. The property taxes will just keep going up and up and up. I have a daughter that lives in a place kind of like that, and the property, taxes are huge, and it's a really nice place. A lot of people there have a lot of money, and because of that, property taxes are just, they're crazy. So, you got to think about that. It's the kind of place that's the property taxes are going to be big, or there's going to be natural disasters that can affect your property. Um, it's entirely possible to homestead on a small property in a small town, even in a city somewhere, and be very productive. Most homesteading actually will take place even on a big giant, say you have a 20 or 30 acre spread. Most of everything you do is probably going to take place on a half an acre. The gardens, trees, a lot of that's going to be within the fruit trees and things like that are going to be within that small, the zones right around your house. Now, when you get into larger livestock, if you're planning on doing, if one of your goals is cattle and, pigs and goats or whatnot, you need more land for them to graze and things. Obviously, you're going to need more land for that. But growing food, especially when you take in permaculture concepts, a lot of this is happening right around your house. And, a half an acre is going to wear you out, wear you out. A quarter acre can wear you out if you're doing things in an intense way, like I do. I mean, I have a quarter acre, and it is, we pack it, and we're doing all kinds of things. And with me having a job and doing some other things that I do, it wears me out. I obviously, if I had more land, I had big livestock, I'd have large livestock. I'd have some cattle and some pigs and things. But even on this small piece of land and the animals that I'm doing with the small livestock and the gardens and the things that I'm doing, like I said, it can wear you out, and you will be very, very productive. Um, you're going to have to utilize a lot of techniques like succession planting and vertical growing, high density companion planting. But doing all those things, you can really grow a significant amount of food. There's a lot of good small livestock options like rabbits, chickens, and quail. And even in some cases, if you have just maybe in certain areas and depending on how your property's set up and maybe just a little bit more land, you can even have goats for meat, and milk. And you'll have your chickens for your eggs, and you'll have just a wide variety of stuff. You're going to have all the things you need really on a small piece of land. So don't rule out a smaller piece of land. Just because maybe your goal one day is to have a huge homestead, you might want to start out with something smaller, or just start out where you're at and make it work. Number 9, and I think this is important, and this is something you plan ahead on, and that's plan to generate an income from your homestead. Even if you're homesteading, I think of homesteading as kind of this personal thing, this thing for me, to grow food for me, to eat healthy, to have to be more self-sufficient, to be more prepared, to just have this security, food security. But if you plan to generate an income from your homestead, it goes kind of beyond that self-sufficient thing, right? It can help offset costs. Um, and when you consider selling products like produce, eggs, handmade goods, you can offer services such as workshops or classes like butchering or canning. It's amazing how it can offset the cost. A lot of people just sell eggs to feed their chickens. I mean, they will. They'll sell the eggs just because they want to feed their chickens and have more, have more chickens, more eggs, and sell some of them and pay for it there. A lot of folks will sell vegetables just so they can buy the seeds and more plants for next year. They're not even really in it to make money. They're just in it to offset the cost, keep the food production pretty much free that way. And that's a good way to do it, even if you're not planning on running a business from your homestead where you're trying to make a living from it. It's totally fine, maybe just to make a little bit, just to offset those costs. I think it's worth doing. Um, Number 10, and this is kind of one of them big picture mindset things, and it's value the work you do. Remember that the work you do on your homestead, whether it's growing food, raising animals, maintaining your home, it's valuable. It's valuable. It saves you money, it builds your skills, it contributes to a fulfilling lifestyle. And in a society that often values only paid labor, it's important to recognize the worth of the self-sufficient lifestyle you're creating. So when we talk about small budget and we talk about making it work, value the work you do. Your work is very valuable and it's part of your budget, but don't underestimate that part of your budget. Your labor is a big part of it. Is a big part of it. So just to wrap up this part of the podcast, of course, these are mostly just big picture mindset tips, but the practical things like, there are practical things like using natural fertilizers and pest controls, investing in quality tools, building community connections that can save you a lot of money with help. These are all just equally important in starting a homestead on a low budget. But these bigger picture items, I think, can really help you start a homestead from scratch or maintain a homestead that you're already on with a low budget. It can be challenging, but very rewarding. But I do believe by embracing this mindset of learning, resourcefulness, and patience, again, we're not in instant gratification, you can build a sustainable, fulfilling lifestyle that's in tune with nature and your long term goals. Remember, every little step, every small step you take today brings you a little bit closer to being in the position you want to be in, that more self sufficient life that you dream of. If you think that there's some other big picture things that you think are really important or even more important than these, mention them. You drop in the comments or jump in the Homestead Front Porch Facebook group and let us know what you think. Share your tips and experiences in the comments about what you think are some of the best budget saving things you can do, small budget ways you can start or even expand or grow or just operate your homestead, no matter where you are in your homesteading journey. I think that's really important. I did want to jump in this week with a couple questions. I wanted to answer a couple questions from the Homestead Front Porch. I'd like to just grab a couple, maybe every week. Again, we used to do this all the time, and it worked out pretty well. I just liked answering questions, and these actually got some answers in the Front Porch Facebook group. By the way, if you're listening to this podcast and you're not part of that Facebook group, go jump in there. It's really good. You can find the links on the website at redemptionpermaculture.com and jump in there. It's there's some good conversations that happen in there sometimes. And I think there's a lot of good questions, and you can participate, you can ask good questions, you can help answer the questions. And these had some questions answered on these, but I thought I'd just give my take on them as well. And I thought they'd be just good ones to throw in here in the podcast. This first one, Kayla asks, how can I bring back these flower beds? She had this picture of these flower beds. They were kind of these herb and flower beds, and they were just full of weeds. And she said there are perennial flowers and herbs scattered in there, but mostly it's just tough grass and goldenrod. So these beds were just kind of messy, and she's wanting to know, is there a way she can kind of bring them back, revive them? And here's the thing: reviving a weed choked flower bed, it's all about clearing out the competition. It's not an easy task because it's full. This bed was really full of weed. That grass especially gets really tough, and removing those tough weeds and that goldenrod, creeping grasses and bindweeds and other things. It's here we have we have all kinds of stuff here that just tends to walk through my gardens and get my flower beds too, and it's horrible. And but the trick is to get it cut back, dig up the roots and the rhizomes and get it out of there. And it's not easy, especially when you got stuff that's got the rhizomes, because it can definitely spread through that, and it gets tough. It gets hard to deal with. So here's the thing: you probably want to consider just temporarily digging out your plants you want to save. If you can identify them, try to identify some of them, get them out, get them in a pot or whatever, and just set them off to the side while you're working that garden, because they're probably just going to be too heavily entangled in there for you to really thoroughly clear the area and do all the things you need to do with the soil to get it back right and then get it back in there. So once you've kind of got them out of there, then you're just going to try to dig all that other stuff out of there. Try to just dig under it, get those rhizomes, get those roots, get them dug up out of there. And then you're going to want to, get soil back in there, get some compost. You're probably going to want to smooth it, rake it out, and amend it with some good organic matter, and then replant your perennials that you want to save, your flowers and your herbs. But then here's the thing: it's one thing to get it done, to do the work, to get these beds cleaned up, get them revived, but maintain them. Try to do that. That's the thing, because it's real easy for a bed to end up looking like that. And it just takes a lot of work to keep them better. It's a lot easier though to maintain them and keep them from being in that position than it is to fix them later. So once you've done all that and you've replanted them, consider just putting some mulch in there, 2 or 3 inch layer of mulch around everything to kind of help suppress the future weeds, kind of fill in the gaps and get more perennials in there. Because here's the thing, nature doesn't like really empty spaces. It'll try to put something in there. But if you do have little broader areas where there's nothing planted there, might want to put down some cardboard and then put some mulch on that. And it kind of helps smother that more immediately. But you're going to stay vigilant. You're going to hand weed it. You're going to, look for any new sprouts of anything you don't want in there and get it out of there. You dig them out, and just keep that mulch refreshed. Keep it kind of deep so those weeds can't pop up. I think the cardboard and the mulch will make a big difference, and just staying on top of it. I find that when you do those two things, you don't need to do a lot of. There'll still be some things. There'll be some dandelions pop. And seeds will plant on the top of that and root down through it. You'll have to dig those out. I mean, it will prevent most of the stuff from coming up from ground level up through the mulch, but seeds blow in there, and then the roots will go down through it. That's one of the biggest mistakes people make with landscape fabric, by the way. A lot of people think you put landscape fabric down and all weeds come up from underneath and it smothers them. But what they don't realize is weed seeds blow in on top of that, and then roots go down through the landscape fabric, and that happens all the time. I mean, I have gravel sidewalks, walkways around through my backyard and stuff, and we have landscape fabric underneath that gravel. Well, you get some seeds in that gravel, and it'll put the roots right down through that landscape fabric right to get to the soil. It's kind of amazing. Plants want to live. They just do. So again, just kind of be proactive about it. Stay on top of it, because clearing it out's one thing, and you're going to realize it's a lot of work, obviously, but you don't want to have to go through that again. And it's easier to keep it fixed up than it is to try to redo that again. So that would be my advice on that. And there were some folks that gave her some great advice as well, I think, in there. And Jordy, a friend of the podcast, been on a couple times. He asked about, does anyone have experience or opinions on growing quince versus the more common orchard fruits? And obviously, I think diversity is really important. And I planted one quince tree 2 years ago. It's still not very big. And here's the thing. And people say, why'd you only plant one? Well, that's the thing. Quince doesn't need two. It's a self-pollinating tree, which is awesome. So you can just have one. It probably would do better and put off more fruit with a couple of them, but it will self-pollinate, and you can get fruit from just one tree. But I think growing a range of fruit trees is obviously, good for a whole bunch of reasons. It just helps create a healthier orchard ecosystem. And I like the idea that when you're planting kind of a variety of trees. I mean, I love having, the traditional, apple and pears and peaches and, all your stone fruits, cherries and all the things, because I just love it that everything blooms at a different time. Like my cherry tree will be the first thing to bloom, and then it'll be like the peach tree, and then the pears, and then the apples. And, it's just like you get everything kind of offsetting and, and doing it at a different time. So I think having quince in there, it's obviously going to be a little different. It's going to give you some diversity in there, make it more resilient. Obviously, I'll offer some, pollination, offer some food for the pollinators. And when you have things kind of staggered around and separated, different pests are attracted to different things. So when you have this variety, it's like you don't draw in like a really strong number of one kind of pest to one thing. Like if you're doing nothing but apple trees, you're gonna have these certain diseases and certain pests. But when you have this variety, it just minimizes the risk there. Quince obviously fits in really good with these things if you're in the growing zones for it. Um, I think it's a great fruit. It's different because it's something you're going to have to cook. And when you use it for culinary purposes, obviously it needs to be. It isn't like an apple. You just want to grab it off the tree and eat it. You want to cook it or make jams and jellies. Or there's a special. I can't remember what it's called now. There's a special dish that you can make out of it. But anyway, it's just a unique. It's not as common as the others, which makes it better. If you're thinking about it for marketing purposes, I mean, you're probably going to be the only guy at a farmer's market with quince, right? Or for your fruit stand or whatever, because it's not common in most places. So it's good to have something that's a little different. It's going to just kind of broaden the horizons and open up some opportunities there, I think. So I think it's a great idea to weave it in there, and it's just kind of a special thing. I think anytime you can add anything kind of different that will grow well in your area, why not? I love it. I mean, I think it's a great idea, and I think you should add it in there. I think you should add all the diversity that you're able to. I know he's only has like an acre of ground, but I'm on a quarter acre and I've got 20 something trees, fruit trees here. So You can grow a lot of stuff. And you can keep them small. They're one that you can keep really small, and so it doesn't even have to take up a lot of space if you didn't want it to. There's a lot of good things. I actually wrote an article about it because I did a lot of research on quince back when I was planting one, and I wanted to know, is it something I should put on my property? And it was. So I wrote an article about it, just talking about some of the benefits of it back then. So you can check that out if you're interested. But I know Jordy makes he's really good at doing his own research and stuff. I think he was just looking for anybody that had some experience with it. And while I will say I have one, I don't have a lot of experience with it because it's still young and I've not seen any fruit from it yet. But I am looking forward to it in the future. I think it'd be a great tree. I think it's going to be a great tree in my little food forest here. I also want to bring back a segment that I did a long time ago. And in this segment, I call it, well, I didn't call it this, but I did it in the um, older podcasts, and I've always always highlighted something, a business or a product or something like that. And we'll call it Homestead Highlight. So I'd like to start doing a Homestead Highlight at the end of every episode. And I'm going to highlight a business that I think is a great business, and that's Mary's Heirloom Seeds. Mary's Heirloom Seeds is just a great seed company. I love everything that she's doing with that business. I've had her on the podcast. She's so knowledgeable. If you're looking to grow a thriving, resilient garden, then I think Mary's Heirloom Seeds is a fantastic source for non-GMO, open pollinated seeds that are perfect for homesteaders. Whether you're filling your garden with nutrient dense veggies or medicinal herbs or just rare or heirloom varieties, she's got quite a variety that she sells. And she has I feel like she has a really high commitment to high quality organic growing, and she makes it easy to cultivate a productive and sustainable homestead with her products. I love the things she's doing. Again, 100% non-GMO heirloom seeds, no Monsanto owned seeds or anything like that in her inventory. Great selection for self-sufficiency and permaculture. And I love that she has a lot of expert gardening tips and resources. She does YouTube videos. She has all this stuff on her website. If you're ready to plant the seeds for success this season, check out Mary's Heirloom Seeds. I'll have the links in the show notes. And yeah, she's great. You're going to get some good product from her. I've grown quite a few things that I've picked up seeds from her, and they do great. So I think you'll be really, really happy with what she offers. So that's today's Homestead Highlight. Well, folks, I think that is all I have for today. I really appreciate you joining me. And yeah, I think that don't let a small budget hold you back. Don't let a small budget hold you back. There's so much you can do right where you're at with what is available to you. I built my first raised beds out of some scrap pieces of fencing that I tore down on an old privacy fence. Was it perfect? Absolutely not. Did it work? I grew a whole bunch of lettuce and tomatoes and cucumbers. And I don't remember what that first year I grew out of these two beds. I built these two small raised beds out of old uh, privacy fence that was tore down. It was free. Put it together, made it work. And would I do it now? Probably not. I would do something better, but it's what I had to work with at the time with no money, and I made it work. I remember putting soil in those beds that was just topsoil. I had no compost. I had nothing. I just put topsoil in there from this guy that has the excavating business. Dumped it in there, and it grew. Things grew. I planted seeds in it, and it grew. It'll work. I mean, is it perfect? Will it do better with the right amendments and things? Obviously. I'm just saying again, don't let a small budget keep you from growing something. You can do it. You can make it work with what you have. You will get better as time goes. You will be able to add to it. You'll be able to spend more money. You'll be able to do things that later that you can't do now. But don't let that small budget stop you. Homestead right where you're at in any way you can. Folks, I appreciate you joining me today. And until next time, happy homesteading and God bless.